All right, I'm Taylor Phillips. Welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. We're talking all four Detroit sports teams: Lions, Red Wings, Pistons, Wolverines, Spartans, and Tigers. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. Like its Facebook page and subscribe to its YouTube channel with a new handle at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. And listen in audio form on Spreaker. Let's start with the Lions. Owner Sheila Fordham still has faith in head coach Dan Campbell and general manager Brad Holmes, despite a frustrating 1-5 record thus far. Now, to sort this all out, Brad Holmes can draft great players in the offseason and sign good free agent players such as wide receiver DJ Chark. The real problem is Dan Campbell's ineptitude at play calling and in-game decision making. In their game against the New England Patriots, for example, he decided to go for it. He decided to go for the line to gain on 4th and 9 yards to go. Yeah, you heard that right. With 3:40-ish left in the second quarter. Not only did that fail miserably in a sack, it also resulted in a fumble recovery at that same exact point of time and a return for a touchdown in the same play to put the game supposedly out of reach at that point. And then 2 weeks later, this past Sunday in Arlington at AT&T Stadium against the Dallas Cowboys, just when the Lions had a glorious scoring opportunity from the 1-yard line after a great long run of yardage, Campbell decided to go up the middle on 1st and goal where there were no holes open in traffic, and their offensive unit fumbled and lost the ball and came up empty. That was one of 5 turnovers, all in the second half against the Cowboys. This is an easy read by the defensive line, typically from a visual standpoint and mental standpoint as well, and therefore just isn't going to work at all for the offense. Maybe they should have tried an end-around route or a short screen pass, a short side screen pass. Just thought I'd suggest those. Now, running back DeAndre Swift was recently removed from the injured reserve and is expected to play against the Miami Dolphins this Sunday at Ford Field. That might bolster their offense a little. Amon-Ra St. Brown, thankfully, does not have a concussion, but he is still questionable for Sunday. I think he may have a chance to play except not start. Who knows? I think that seems fair. That game, by the way, is televised on CBS, which is the second consecutive game for the Lions televised on CBS. Kickoff is set for 1 as usual. The Dolphins are favored at -4, and the total over-under is 51.5 points right now, as of right now. Look for Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa to at least try to provide an A-game performance against the Lions defense, led by Aiden Hutchinson, came up with at least 2 sacks against Dallas, and Jeff Okudah has been making a lot of tackles as of late. I still don't expect the Pistons to win too many games moving on forward, even if they are competing with new draft picks Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren and trade acquisition center Bojan Bogdanovic and so on. Dwayne Casey, still being their head coach, just isn't getting them anywhere much. He keeps using the wrong players in crunch time and tight scores. Why did he not play Jalen Duren in that tight situation in the first of a doubleheader against the Atlanta Hawks at Little Caesars Arena? I know Duren still struggles at the free throw line, 1 for 8 thus far. He finally hit one 2 nights ago against Atlanta, but still awful at that line, except all of it came pretty close and were not air balls at that point of time, unlike Andre Drummond in the past. But for Jalen Duren, aside from that, his free throw struggles, he can still provide offense on the court. He can, in the post especially, and in mid-range jump shots. But what also really pisses me off about Dwayne Casey is that he keeps yapping at the officials, and he keeps clapping his hands when the Pistons make mistakes. He's too soft on them. I'm not expecting every coach to be way too hard on a team, but Dwayne Casey is too soft on him. You got to go in between. You got to lead by example and give constructive criticism toward their team. Sometimes he does that, but Dwayne Casey, I just don't think he's good enough. The Red Wings started their season with a 5-game non-regulation loss streak before losing two straight regulation losses, both in convincing fashion to the New Jersey Devils at home and the Boston Bruins on the road last night at TD Garden. What really pisses me right off is the Red Wings color announcer of any popular name, whether it be Mickey Redmond, Chris Osgood, or Larry Murphy or Paul Woods on TV or radio, repetitively coming up with the excuse of bad puck luck. Like repetitively, Chris Osgood last night, it just kept on coming and coming and coming publicly on the Bally Sports Detroit airwaves. And they say it always factors against their team every time they give up a goal and can't come up with one. Those men are typically heavy one-sided shills and homers that have very little respect for opposing teams, including the Boston Bruins, who recently have been in the top 2, at least in the NHL power rankings from Bleacher Report, number 1 last night heading into that 5-1 loss, and ESPN a bit earlier today. It's not puck luck or lack thereof. It's puck control or lack thereof. And the Bruins last night controlled the puck a lot better than the Red Wings did in that 5-1 shilling at TD Garden. The Red Wings have to come up with more intellectual ways to control the puck better than they have in their 2 consecutive regulation losses. I know it's hard to do, but if they start doing that, then they have a better chance at winning more games. They're home against the Minnesota Wild at Little Caesars Arena tomorrow night at 7. That is on Bally Sports Detroit. I may not be able to watch much of that because Michigan State at Michigan is at 7:30 on ABC. Michigan is ranked 4th in the nation. Wolverines head coach Jim Harbaugh is 0-2 against Spartans head coach Mel Tucker. Harbaugh is due for a win against Tucker. Michigan is favored by 23.5 points with a total at 55 flat, while remaining undefeated, while State is 3-4. Last year's meeting in East Lansing was a doozy. The Spartans came back from down 2 scores to win 37-33. The Wolverines are looking and hungry for revenge. They got Blake Corum, they got Cornelius Johnson, they got Donovan Edwards, they got Ronnie Bell, they got J.J. McCarthy. This offensive unit is loaded with talent. And the Wolverines defense, despite not having Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo, are still pretty darn good. Yeah. DJ Turner at cornerback. Oh, you got Morris at defensive tackle. He's been sacking opposing quarterbacks. Look for all those guys to continue to do their jobs. The Michigan State Spartans, they know how important the rivalry is. Although rivalries don't matter to me, but I care more about analytics. But this is a big game, especially for Michigan, but also for Michigan State too. They are coming off an overtime win over Wisconsin 2 weeks ago. Both U of M and State have their bye week last weekend. So both teams are going to be well rested. Both teams are going to be well rested. Both teams are going to be well rested going into tomorrow night's game under the lights in Ann Arbor at Michigan Stadium, the Big House. The biggest stadium in college football history, arguably. Now, last but not least, since the Tigers have hired Scott Harris as team president, they have made an overhaul thus far. They got rid of their hitting coach, Scott Coolbaugh, and senior director of medical services, Kevin Rand. Now, Kevin Rand in the past had been an athletic trainer for the Tigers. but he moved to the senior director of medical services, but was recently let go by new team president Scott Harris. They also hired Rob Metzler from the Tampa Bay Rays as vice president and assistant general manager number 3 to replace old assistant GM David Chad. The other two are Sam Menzen, who pinched in as interim GMs after Al Avila was fired, and Jay Satori from Al Avila's old squad. They still don't have a permanent general manager yet. So the Tigers' offseason is still only just beginning. So keep your eyes peeled. So that is it for today's episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Michigan_Truth. Like its Facebook page and subscribe to its YouTube channel with the handle at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. And listen in audio form on Spreaker. Special business shout-outs go to Cali Tickets. Call Mark Goldman at 877-225-8425. That's 877-225-8425, or visit CaliTickets.com. Creative Embroidery of Cadillac, designing my Michigan Sports Truth Podcast logo on my t-shirt and long sleeve shirt. Jim Lyons at United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan. And that's all the shout outs I have. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is a presentation and production of Phillips Media. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Hit him with a high. Case rested and solved.